US President Joe Biden has been in the state of Georgia to sell his pledge of financial support and healthcare reform for what he describes as forgotten Americans. Earlier, I spoke to Professor John Lawrence. He's the former Chief of Staff to Nancy Pelosi and author of the book Class of 74 and the blog Domeocracy. I began by asking him what he makes of Joe Biden's first 100 days in office.
I think you've seen a pretty dramatic reversal on a whole series of issues, from national security and international relations, things like through executive orders, for example, rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement, beginning the negotiations on Iraq. But on the national side, really focused on the coronavirus, on distributing the various vaccines around the United States, and passing $1.9 trillion legislation that facilitates vaccination, and now moving on to about a $2 trillion package that will address broader issues of the infrastructure and job creation, getting the economy back moving. We've had very good economic numbers in the United States over the last couple of days, announced annualized economic growth of over 6% and very low unemployment claims. So people, I think, really do feel, as the president said last night in his address to Congress, that we're emerging from a very long, dark period in American history, both economically, from the standpoint of health, and I would say also from a political standpoint. People are feeling better about the government and feeling better about the direction of the country.
Joe Biden vowed to unite America. That's a huge challenge. How is he going?
Well, you know, he vowed to try, and that is going to be a very, very difficult thing for him or for anyone to do. I've been doing some writing on this subject and noted that really the country remains ideologically and on political issues pretty much divided, with very few exceptions. There was strong bipartisan support for the coronavirus bill. There is strong support for immigration reform. There's strong support for gun reform, but that does not translate over into the Republicans in Congress. And so I think there are two different issues here, and that you're going to see the president try to define bipartisanship, not from the standpoint of whether or not Republicans in Congress vote for his programs, but whether or not Republicans in the country support the program. He's seeing that on issues like infrastructure and coronavirus, handling the economy. He's not really seeing it yet on some of the contentious issues like guns and immigration. But you're going to see this effort to really redefine what bipartisanship means, because the Republicans, looking at a midterm election in less than 2 years and very narrow margins in the House and Senate, they certainly have no political inclination to help Biden or to help Democrats and legitimize their role as the majority party.
Okay, looking at Biden's 100 days, how does his time compare to other recent presidents?
Well, he moved very quickly on the coronavirus, and in that way, he has gotten off to a very strong start. His appointments, which are always a critical part of any new administration in the United States, some have run a little slower than others. In part, this is because there's a very narrow margin in the Senate. And with the coronavirus, it's still difficult to have the pace of confirmations. He has laid out, and of course last night in an address to the Congress, laid out a very expansive domestic policy agenda to the Congress. He has invited members of both parties down to the White House to begin negotiations. So I think he's off to a strong start. And the one thing that we have to keep in mind, which is really different from most recent presidents, is that he has a very, very, very thin margin in the House, only about 4 or 5 seats, and a tied Senate. So having the votes to actually implement any of the things he's talking about is going to depend either on convincing a large number of Republicans to come over and support them so that they can get by the filibuster rule in the Senate, 60 votes, which they're nowhere near doing. They can use this reconciliation process, which they used already for the coronavirus bill, which lets them pass a bill with only 51 votes. or they may have to change the filibuster rules. It does present a formidable challenge to President Biden's aggressive domestic agenda, particularly if you compare it historically to past sweeping domestic policy agendas by President. Those only happen when there are very large margins of the president's party in the House and Senate, and that's not what President Biden's situation is.
Finally, John, what do you expect to see in Biden's next 100 days?
I think the most important things that you'll see are going to be a continued progress on reopening the economy as the coronavirus vaccine is widely distributed. It's already he is considerably ahead of schedule in terms of the vaccination, and I think that within the next 100 days, you're going to see the vast preponderance of adult Americans who will be fully vaccinated or partially vaccinated. So that's number one, is getting the vaccine around so that we're in a position where over the summer, and then particularly when schools need to open in the fall, they're able to do so. And then I think the other thing to watch very carefully will be the progress that's made on this big infrastructure bill, where the president has defined an extremely ambitious and wide-ranging definition of what constitutes infrastructure. I think there'll be a lot of interest in that because every community in the United States needs help with bridges and highways and airports and ports and national security and the internet. The key issue there will be, are they able to find a way of paying for it? We were talking about infrastructure as a major initiative back in 2009 when President Obama first became president. So the fact that we're still talking about it over 10 years later really indicates how difficult it is, and the difficulty there is paying for it. That'll be the biggest domestic challenge facing him.
Professor John Lawrence, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much. Appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today.
Gabby, it's always nice to talk with you. Take care.